We all know that life is impossible without water. We take it for granted that getting water is as simple as opening a tap. Well, almost true. But let us see why this situation is not as comfortable as it seems and why we need to meter consumption of water, especially in large communities and apartments. Fresh water is what we need in our taps. Let's see some basic data on fresh water. The amount of water on the planet has not changed, but what has changed is how much fresh water is accessible to us. To get a sense of proportion, imagine all the water on the earth were placed in a 100-liter tank. Of the 100 liters of all the water available, the fresh water on earth would then just be about 2.5 liters. Of these 2.5 liters, the amount accessible would be a mere 25 ml or about 5 teaspoons. So just about 5 teaspoons from a whole tank of 100 liters. That is the proportion of fresh water available to all of us on Earth. Some estimates are even more pessimistic, saying that just 0.007% or little more than a teaspoon from the 100-liter tank is available. And this proportion is decreasing. As the years pass, we have less fresh water accessible to all of us, especially in the cities. In 2018, Cape Town in South Africa became the first big city to almost run out of water, with taps being shut off and people waiting in queues for water. There are a list of such cities which are in danger of losing water, and these are called water risk cities. Recently, the WWF released a list of cities across the world which face a risk of being water starved. Scale of 5. Anything above 3 is considered high risk. The WWF study shows that among the cities in India, Bangalore faces the highest risk of running out of water and the risk is ranked as 4.6. So why do our cities run out of water? Let us look at Bangalore as an example. The city gets about 1.1 meter of rain annually, and in theory rainwater can be harvested. But lakes have been lost due to many reasons. In the last 200 years, lake capacities have been reduced by a factor of 7, while the city's population has increased over 50 times. The combined effect on per capita water availability is a reduction by a factor of over 300. Sometimes construction happens on lake beds. This is a double disaster because when it rains heavily, residential areas get inundated, and when there is no rain, there are no lakes to provide water. In other cases, lakes are much too polluted to have their water be usable. In short, there is much lesser water for a much larger population. So, how about groundwater? In cities like Bangalore, which are heavily dependent on groundwater, many people mistakenly believe that there's an almost unlimited amount of groundwater. That is, till the time that one of the bore wells suddenly goes dry. Water is accumulated in underground areas called aquifers. For those of us in Bangalore, we know that a borewell needs to go almost 1,000 feet into the ground to reach water. The water in these aquifers would have taken decades, if not centuries, to accumulate. High-rise apartments can draw more than 100,000 liters per day from a single borewell. At this rate, the borewell runs dry within just a few years, and the hunt begins for a new source of water. Most high-rise apartments do not have separate meters per home or per flat. Why do we need to change this? Let us take an example. If we are watching our weight regularly, we are sure to keep it under control. Likewise, if we track our investments and our expenses, we will also get them under control. In short, whatever we track and measure regularly becomes easy to control. We have seen why water is not just a precious resource, but getting scarce every year as our cities grow. If people do not know how much they are consuming and they are not paying the right price, it is highly unlikely that water will be given the importance it deserves so that it is conserved. Economists working on pricing policy for water have advocated some simple measures for conservation. At present, most apartments and communities do not have individual meters, and people indirectly pay a flat rate for water buried inside a monthly maintenance fee. This makes consumers even unaware of how much they are consuming and how much they ought to pay. There's no incentive to reduce and no penalty for wastage. In short, people will not value water. To encourage conservation of a precious resource like water, what people pay should be tied to consumption. This is where metering of water per unit or per house becomes essential. Here are a couple of recommendations that have been made by experts. First, tiered pricing, as in electricity, with slabs which will discourage excess consumption. Secondly, a surcharge should be applied almost like a penalty for wastage. If you ask someone about the price of water, chances are that they will tell you what the government owned water and sewerage board charges the apartment. What is usually overlooked are the other large investment an apartment makes, like drilling a bore well, installing pumps, sewage treatment, manpower, piping, etc. When all this is added up, the resultant price of water can be surprisingly high. That would be a good basis to arrive at a per unit cost within an apartment. Just a week before the COVID lockdown began in March 2020, a strike was called by tanker owners who supply water. In summer months, it is not the price but the availability of water that becomes a concern. Water may soon become something that money cannot buy enough of. I do hope that individual homes will soon be metered and water is valued by everybody for the precious resource that it is. Thank you.